I hope you have your wine and your popcorn and you just got your feet up on your ottoman and you're just ready to dive into some depravity. He promises he won't diddle another kid again. Your Honor, diddling kids is out for him. We're not going to do that anymore. Rivers, welcome to another creepy episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer, here to talk to you about the former Faith Life leader, Tom Kesey, megachurch star.
I don't look the part.
He's accused of all kinds of criminal sexual conduct. And this is a case where he's got all kinds of victims and all kinds of allegations. We're going to get into it's in Ohio, and we're going to get into the indictment and news conference. And you're going to hear the name of the county, which is just, you can't make this shit up. You just can't make it up. So let's start just a little background. So there's a church in Ohio called the Faith Life Church. Let me tell you something about the ultra-religious. I love them. But they never are who they say they are. People who wear too much religion on their sleeve. You know, I'm a Catholic, okay? And I go to church, you know, not every Sunday, but, you know, pretty regularly. I like going to church, but I don't wear it on my sleeve and I don't push it on anybody else. The people in these mega churches, they get glossy-eyed and, you know, and then they give all their money to the pastor and, you know, can I spread my legs for the pastor too? I mean, fucking A. You know, and guess what these pastors do, or the leaders of these churches? Now, not every one of them, obviously. If the leader of the church is in a Falcon jet.
Again, getting back to the comment, you said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
I have a problem with that. I just fucking do, because little grandma's giving her hard-earned money, and then, we can give you a drop of holy water, tear water, and then we're going to put it in the mail to you if you send me $8,000. Give me a fucking break. Anyway, that's my little spiel on overly religious people. But they tend to also, I mean, do you remember Jimmy Swaggart, you know, and all the shit that in Tammy Faye, and, you know, they get a lot of power. And guess what happens when they get a lot of power? They get corrupt. And when you've had other religious sects that go crazy on sex too, and it becomes part of their cult. And now I'm not saying that that's part of this particular church. I don't know, but we do know that there's a lot of people who have fallen victim to this Tom Kesey. Keep in mind, these are not new allegations. I mean, they've newly surfaced, but they come from 2001 and 2000 to 2003. So how old? He's 36 now. How old was he back then? He was a minor himself. And the thing about these crim sex, he's facing 27 counts. 27 counts. And what the allegation is that when and some were as young as 5 years old. 5 years old. And the allegation is that he was grooming them, and then he sexually touched them, and some he had actual sex with. I'm telling you, you don't see women doing this shit. Fucking A. His bond was set at $2 million with GPS monitoring and no contact with the victims. He had to resign from his position at the Faith Life Church, good idea, church, and the investigation is ongoing. When you have this kind of prolific contact with people, guess what? More people come out of the woodwork. So I would suspect there are more counts, but he's pleaded not guilty to 27 counts, 11 of rape and 11 of gross sexual imposition, which it's just other kind of touching, and 5 of unlawful sexual conduct. During a hearing now get this, I don't know if I'm reading this right, but I'm just going to read this to you. This is from the Columbus Dispatch. Licking County prosecutors, acting as special prosecutor in this case, charged him with 2 counts of rape on April 18th before a grand jury indicted him with the other charges. So the neighboring county is Licking County? You can't make this shit up. Multiple women have alleged Kesey groomed them when they were minors into trusting him and then had sex with them. The indictment involves 3 victims who have come forward who were 6 to 15 years old at the time of the alleged abuse. Licking County Prosecutor Jenny Wells, I don't know if that means she's licking or the county is named Licking. I think it means the county is named Licking. I can't imagine she was licking during a press conference. But why don't we take a look at what his attorney has to say? You know, and guess what? When you're sitting next to somebody that's accused of all this shit, the first thing the jury is picturing is him doing this shit. I guarantee. It's like, what if I told you don't think of an elephant? What do? You immediately think of an elephant. Gary Thomas Tom Keese Jr., son of New Albany megachurch founders, appeared in court for the first time on April 23rd, 2 days after a Knox County grand jury indicted him on nearly 30 criminal charges of abuse.
This case because he's wrongly accused.
Sam, alleged victims were juveniles, alleged...
This is what I don't do. I don't sit out in front of the courthouse and say, we're here to fight this case because he's been wrongly accused. Guess what? Hands down the road, you try a case and all of a sudden you lose. I guess he was rightly accused then? I mean, I just don't do that because you go out on a limb. You can't believe everything your client says.
Perpetrator was a juvenile. Does that add to the difficulty on either prosecution or defense?
That's a very good question. The answer is yes, it does, because we're talking about crimes that allegedly occurred as long as 2003. So we're talking 22 years ago, and I think the most recent, if I understand this document correctly, is 2011. Yes, I mean, it's difficult for everybody involved, right?
The problem with historical cases is they're very difficult to defend against. There's probably no physical evidence. There's no DNA. There's no nothing. And how do you recreate where you were when you were, 22 years ago from 2003?
You can imagine how hard it is as you ask, how are you going to disprove all of these allegations? Well, of course, it's the government's burden to prove them beyond a reason.
Prove to me you didn't speed on the way to work. How do you do that? You can't.
Doubt, but until we look at the statements and cross-reference the times and try to nail it down, who knows? These cases are fraught with difficulty for sure from both sides, or for both sides, I should say.
This could be jumping ahead. I know we just had the arraignment, but this is a small community. Are you worried about eventually finding a jury that hasn't heard about this case?
My experience, and I don't just practice in Columbus, is that jurors, once selected, follow the law. And if you follow the rules, you get the right result. And so I have no doubt that the citizens of this community can look through all the hoopla, all the BS, all the social media crap that's been spewed, and look at the facts of the case. Have these charges been proved beyond a reasonable doubt? That's the standard. If the government's prepared to meet it, bring it on.
I do agree with that. I think juries, by and large, take a case seriously. And if you have a really high-profile case, you're going to want to probably move it if you can. Now, let's take a look at the indictment here. This is in Knox County, Ohio. I'm just going to read a couple of the accounts because they pretty much read the same. On or about the 31st day of May, 2002 to the 30th of May, 2003, in the county of Knox, state of Ohio, Gary Thomas Keese Jr. did commit rape by engaging in sexual conduct with another who is not the spouse of the offender when the other person is less than 13 years of age, whether or not the offender knows the age of the other person. A felony of first degree, contrary to and in violation of section blah, 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 and contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided against the peace and dignity of the state of Ohio. And most of them say almost identical. So there's not really a whole lot of detail in these counts. There's 27 counts. Now, here's the thing. He was a minor when this stuff was going on. Well, I take that back. Because it goes to 2008, let's see, 2000, yeah, and I think there might be other charges that go to 2011. So 2011, he would have been an adult, and 2008 he would have been an adult. So when you look at this kind of case, first of all, you're going to have victim after victim after victim come up and say what he did to him way back when. So this jury is just going to be inundated with heart-wrenching testimony by people who said that they were 5 or 6 years old when this stuff was going on, that he groomed them. And you might even have, now that it's out, people feeling free to come forward and say that it happened last week or it happened 5 years ago. So you might have, and then this pattern of conduct becomes so freaking powerful, it's almost impossible to overcome. Because guess what? Remember what I said about crim sex cases? There's 3 parties in a crim sex case. There's the rescuer, there's the perpetrator, and then there's the victim. And the rescuer is always the jury. And they're always going to want to protect a child, aren't they? Of course they are. And the trick is to make it so that you switch it, so that you are the victim and the accusers are the perpetrators, and the jury has to rescue you from the accusers. That's kind of the trick that you try to, how you try to frame a criminal sexual conduct case. The problem with a case like this is when you have multiple victims that probably know each other or don't know each other. People may or may not have talked, especially if they haven't talked and they come up with similar allegations. How everybody's lying? That's the issue that I have with these types of cases. So let's just kind of watch what the local news coverage has been about this.
We are following breaking news right now out of Knox County. More charges have been filed for the son of a New Albany megachurch pastor in connection to sexual abuse allegations. Gary Thomas Cassie Jr. is now facing at least 27 charges, including rape, gross sexual imposition, and unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. Cassie's case was just heard by a grand jury in Knox County. We are still working to learn the details about that grand jury indictment, but in the court document.
So you got 27 counts, 3 of the victims, with only 3 victims, so that's a positive, I guess. Fuck. But the problem is that they're all under 13. Under 13. That's what we call an aggravating factor.
Court documents we were able to obtain when he was arrested on Friday. There are a total of 3 victims, all under the age of 13. The first reports of abuse happened when Cassie would have been between the ages of 12 and 14. While Cassie left his position at the church last year, his parents, Gary and Brenda Cassie, are the lead pastors. An attorney for Faith Life Church sent us this statement about the arrest of Tom Cassie on Friday. They say the complaint alleges incidents that occurred 2 decades ago that in no way involved the church. They say Faith Life Church has cooperated with investigators. This case dates back to December last year.
Notice the news reporter didn't say what county it was. She completely doesn't say that. It's Licking County. Yeah, how do you have a criminal sexual conduct case in Licking County? I thought in Licking County anything goes.
Last year, when a report of alleged sexual abuse was filed in Knox County, but the Knox County Sheriff's Office had to recuse itself from the case due to a conflict of interest. The suspect's mom, Brenda Cassie, is a Knox County commissioner and signs the sheriff's budget. Per protocol, the case was then sent to Attorney General Dave Yost's office. But Yost says he has a personal friendship with Brenda and Gary Cassie and also had to recuse himself. That is how the Licking County Sheriff's Office was assigned the case then back in February. And today, their office, alongside the Licking County prosecutor, will have a joint news conference to talk about the investigation. We will have a crew at that news conference, and you can stream it live on our...
When you get charged with something, like a heinous act like this, it's embarrassing. First of all, most criminal sexual conduct type cases are in the dark. Right? They are behind closed doors. People get threatened. Don't tell anybody about this. If it's other kinds of stuff, you're isolated, right? So when it all of a sudden comes to light, people are judging you. Now let's take a look at his court hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Clinton J. Murphy, Licking County Assistant County Prosecutor, 0063519.
Thanks, sir. Thank you for being here. Your Honor, good afternoon, sir. Sam Shemansky on behalf of the accused. Mr. Gazillo is seated to my right. Thank you. And sir, are you there, Thomas Gazillo?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
What do you think the fees for his defense lawyer are? They certainly over $100,000. I bet they got to be at least $250,000.
The black counsel to approach the bench, before we check. I have a couple of questions for you.
So the first thing that happens when you get an indictment and you make your first appearance, the judge asks if you want it read or do you want to waive reading, and then they set conditions of release. And this is where they set the bond.
So acknowledged, Your Honor, my client has been receiving the indictment for many days. I've explained the same to him, read it to him, waive a reading. And whenever the court is ready, we'll enter pleas of not guilty to all counts contained therein.
Right now, please.
Not guilty, Judge, on all counts contained therein. Thank you.
All right, so addressing the matter of bond, what does the state have to say about bonds? Thank you, Your Honor. The state would request $5 million, cash surety, no contact with victims, GPS monitoring, the bond is made.
Now, what are the issues for bail? The issues are risk of flight and danger to the public. Now, in this case, the most recent allegation is 2008 from the indictment that I saw. It might be 2011. But the other thing is the number of victims and the prolific nature of what happened makes the charge punishable by a shitload of fucking time. It's prison time, right? And that's one of the things that the court, takes into consideration as well. So you've got risk of flight, danger to the public, and maybe danger to himself too, because if all of a sudden you think that you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life, what are you going to do to yourself? I had a guy that just jumped off a bridge, because he saw the train coming. Not on the bridge, but he saw that he was going to potentially go to prison for 40 years. So the state here has asked for $5 million bond.
As well as surrender any passport. The request is based on 22 of these counts are classified as crimes of violence, and then it actually has.
Now, the counter argument is, Your Honor, he's got no criminal history. He's lived in this community his whole life, so he's not a risk of flight. He's hired me. He's invested in me, and I'm here to represent him. And he hasn't had any offenses since then that we know of.
There'll be multiple properties in both the U.S. and Canada, and as well as apparently access to a private plane. Thank you. Thank you. And is there a victim advocate courtroom? Yes, Your Honor. All right. And the victim's present to hear the speech. Yeah, Your Honor. Then you know what you speak. Your Honor. Thank you. And what does that have to say about that?
Your Honor, first and foremost, of course, I don't need to remind the court about bail in Ohio.
I love it when somebody, well, of course, I don't need to remind you of, and then they go into what they don't want to remind you of.
You understand it well. With respect to risk of flight, Judge, I'd like you to consider the following. These are facts. These aren't flights of fancy. My client does not have access to a private plane. He doesn't own a plane, doesn't have a pilot's license. He doesn't intend to flee. We have known about the existence of this investigation now for probably the better part of 3 or 4 months. It's been no secret that these accusations have been made. They've been swirling throughout social media, throughout his parents' church community. So had Thomas had the inclination to flee, he certainly wouldn't have waited until just a few days ago to exercise that intention. The truth of the matter is, Your Honor, that he respects this system of justice. He has faith in.
This channel is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. So, for example, if you're an elderly woman and worried about the treatment that your grandson is doing as you're wasting away in the basement, trying to find out if you have a claim for elder abuse, what would you do? You go to AskALawyer.com. Hey, Grandma, no, stop. Anyway, just kidding. She's not here. This is my office. So AskALawyer.com actually is a very cheap and inexpensive way of trying to get a lawyer's opinion about your case or any kind of question you might have for a lawyer. So, for example, you might have an idea, would this be a good case to bring? Or somebody aggrieved me. Do I have, recompense? And so you can get an actual lawyer's opinion for $49. That's not bad. Or you can go to their AI component and do your own research that's trained on the 50 nifty United States laws and the federal laws. So go to AskALawyer.com. They're a very loyal sponsor of the channel. AskALawyer.com. They're also the same people that brought you eForm and eSign. So what would happen here is they are talking to these girls, right? And they don't tell you that they're talking to these women. They're now women, but they were young girls at the time. And so you don't really know that's going on. Then all of a sudden, the law enforcement may reach out to you and try to take a statement from you. What's your version of this? And the first thing that you should do when that happens is call your lawyer. And so and then the lawyer would call the prosecutor, and any good lawyer wouldn't let you give a statement to the cops. Just wouldn't happen. Unless you were in Detroit when it happened in wherever this is, Licking County.
Our system and then the citizens of this county to make a good, fair decision. And he's hired my firm to represent him throughout these proceedings. So he doesn't present a risk of flight. And in further consideration of that contention, of that assertion, Your Honor, is that he stands before you with no record. He has a business. He's involved in production.
Production of what? He's a video producer. Here's the thing. If you like little girls way back then, you probably still like them now, is my guess. Try to get me to eat cranberries. I fucking hate cranberries. It's not my flavor. Don't like fucking cranberries. If I had cranberries at a Thanksgiving table, I throw up. I don't fucking like cranberries. But if your flavor is a flavor, it doesn't really change. I love roast beef. Older roast beef. But here's the thing. A guy like him, you go search his computer. Is there going to be child porn on his computer? Wouldn't doubt it for a fucking minute. Now, I don't know that there is. And there probably isn't a way, absent some other facts coming out, that they could get probable cause to go search his computer. But as part of the conditions of release, surrender all electronics, no internet, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they surrender your electronics, and then now they can search your stuff because there's a court order. I've seen that happen before. I had a client who was ripping off the church. It was fucking another church guy. I've had a bunch of church cases. That's why my informed, and maybe I'm a little jaded because, guess what? When I see it, it's bad. But he was ripping off the church. And I think I've told the story before, and he was making fake bank statements to make it look like the church had money in the bank when he was just gambling it away. Well, guess what? And they knew it was fake because they went to the bank themselves. Not hard to figure that out, right? And so then they executed a search warrant on his computer to look for the bank statements. But guess what they found? Almost 7,000 images of child porn. If you would have just copped to the theft to begin with, instead of trying to cover it up, you would have done maybe a couple of years. But he wound up getting almost 15 years for the child porn. Mandatory minimum. See you later.
Movie production. He's married. He's gainfully employed. He's a property owner in Licking County.
I'm sorry. What county was that? And what's he charged with?
His parents, who are longtime members of this community, are also owners of property here. Both of those properties are available to be pledged should the court feel that's necessary. But I would submit to you, Your Honor, that what you haven't heard from the government is any reason as to why my client presents this as a risk of flight. And the reason you haven't heard that is because it doesn't exist. And Cliff and his office are very good prosecutors. If they had evidence, if they had any fact to...
The risk of flight comes from just the nature of the case, because it's just really, really serious. And you've got 27 counts. And guess what they can do with these counts? They can stack them up against each other. And that means consecutive, at least with respect to the victims. You've got 3 victims. You could stack all 3 of those, or you could stack all of them, consecutive. You've seen them do that with the, who's that gym coach or that, gymnastics doctor. Remember that doctor that had like 170 fucking counts, and he was doing bad shit to everybody that came before him. I mean, and he went up getting, how many? I think he got like over 100 years or something. He just got an insane amount.
Any fact to present to you that says, hey, this gentleman is a risk of flight, you would have heard it. But their silence speaks volumes. And the reality is that there is no risk of flight. And next, I'd ask you to consider danger to the community. These are most certainly extremely serious charges. We take them seriously.
He promises he won't diddle another kid again. Your Honor, diddling kids is out for him. We're not going to do that anymore. Learn my lesson.
And in fact, the court is already aware, having reviewed the indictment, that I think count 17 or one of the counts might be a 25 to life. We had to go through the statutes, but I believe that the 2007 rape statute may carry 25 to life of a child under 13 but older than 10. So the stakes are certainly high. But I would also submit to you, Your Honor, that even if you were to assume for a minute that these counts had some validity past the fact that they were indicted by a grand jury, and we recognize how low that standard is. The last act, I believe, is alleged to have occurred in 2011. So we know from at least 2011 to 2025, my client has been doing nothing but working hard.
Or nobody's come forward yet in that time frame. I mean, just because we have from 2011 to 14 years where nobody's come forward yet, maybe they just haven't come forward. But if they do, he's fucking cooked.
And following the law. Not a single criminal charge has been levied against him because he hasn't committed any criminal acts. So the fact of the matter is, Judge, that you can safeguard the community.
Let's say in March. What happened in March? Well, in March, he wasn't indicted yet, right? So you could say from 2003 to 2025, he was crime-free.
With global positioning satellites, with restrictions on travel, surrender of passport, we believe is wholly appropriate. But I would submit to the court that an appearance bond in an amount that reflects not only my client's lack of flight risk, but also his lack of record and the presumption of innocence, and the incredible amount of time that has passed between 2011 and 2025, it is an extremely important consideration for the court. Additionally, Judge, without getting into the strength of the evidence, because I frankly don't know how strong the evidence is. But again, if you had some super compelling evidentiary positions or facts that the government was in possession of, such as his DNA is here, his confession, you would have heard that today, and you have not.
Somebody's oral test, and I love it when somebody comes to me and says, well, they don't have any evidence. They have witnesses who are talking. Oral testimony is evidence.
You to presume from that this is a case that will rest probably exclusively on witness testimony. And again, I'm not in a position to comment on whether it's strong or weak, but I can assure you, Your Honor, that my client presents no risk of danger, and he will follow scrupulously any order that you put on this case in terms of bail. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, the court's going to set a bond of $2 million jury without intent.
He set it at $2 million. So the state asked for $5 million, and the court set it at $2 million. So what does that mean for him? It means he's got to come up with $200,000 cash for a bondsman, and then he has to put up that amount in property to secure the bond, because you think they're going to just let you have a $2 million line of credit if you don't show up? Because guess who pays that? The bondsman pays that. So let's just take a quick look at the press conference that the state gave. You really can't make this up. A criminal sexual conduct case hosted out of Licking County.
Good afternoon, you folks ready? Good afternoon. I'm Licking County Sheriff Randy Thorpe, and here present with me today is Licking County Prosecutor Jenny Wells.
Good afternoon.
Captain Jay Cook, Captain Gus Moore, Chief Deputy Chad Dennis, and Chief Deputy Chris Barbudo. As many of you probably may be aware of, earlier today the Knox County Grand Jury returned a 27-count indictment.
So now when a jury returns an indictment, it's done in secret. So it's sealed until the defendant is arrested. So they don't tell you, oh, by the way, we're taking this to the grand jury. We'll see you once they indict you, and you can just turn yourself in. So they keep it sealed until they arrest the defendant.
Against Gary Thomas Kesey, Jr. on various sex-related criminal offenses. I would just like to talk a little bit about the investigation, the process. Licking County received this case on February 7th. So over the period of a couple of months, these investigators worked hard, spoke to many.
You might wonder, it's 20 some years ago. Isn't the statute of limitations apply? Well, in a lot of jurisdictions, the statute of limitations doesn't apply or doesn't start to run until it's reported. It's like 3 years after it's reported in some jurisdictions. In some jurisdictions, there is no statute of limitations. Like murder, there's no in every jurisdiction. In every jurisdiction, there is no statute of limitations for murder.
Various, I want to say, witnesses, victims, and the result is the indictments that were returned today. It's been a case that's drawn a lot of attention, but I just want to make sure everyone realizes that our focus is on the victims. That's what matters to us. The victims in this case, unfortunately, had to wait. It's my understanding that that there were victims that came forward as early as December. We received the case in February. There were a couple of agencies that looked at doing the investigation. They opted not to.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for coming here today. I do want to commend the Licking County Sheriff's Office for their extensive investigation, which led to the case being presented today to the Knox County Grand Jury. They did a thorough investigation that took them to multiple states and led them to tracking down somewhere near 40 witnesses that they've interviewed. And this case is far from over at this point, but as the sheriff said, it was time for us to move forward with the information we had at this time and present the case.
So that means the investigation is ongoing and there may be additional victims.
So today the Knox County heard testimony and did return that 27 indictment that the sheriff spoke about, involving 3 victims of sexual abuse who have come forward. These courageous young women have spoken out and come forward, and they are to be commended for their bravery and supported. They're very serious charges that we've considered and the grand jury voted on: 11 counts of rape, 11 counts of gross sexual imposition, and 5 counts of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. And as I indicated, that the investigation is still ongoing, and we simply would ask, and I'm asking on behalf of the Sheriff's Office as well, that anyone who has any information or anybody who has been a victim, that they still can come forward and share that information with law enforcement.
So if you get new allegations, does that mean that he has to go back and relitigate his bond? Possibly, because that's a change in circumstances. I mean, there's a 20-minute press conference, so I don't want to, just gives you a flavor for what they're doing. So now what? So now you've got three now women making allegations that when they were children, under 13, that you did all this rotten shit to them. So what do? You have to look into their background. You got to do whatever you can in terms of a defense. And, it's easy from the state's perspective. Just get up and tell your story, right? I mean, you got 3 people. They're going to tell their story. And here's how they do it. This is what kills me about this. They'll get up and tell their story. Then the people who they told their story to, they get up and say, yeah, they told me their story, and this is what they said. It's what they call a prior consistent statement. And who are going to be the witnesses for the defense? I guess if you're saying that this never happened, then you have to have people to come in and question their credibility. You have to have people come in and say where you were when 22 years ago, all the way up to 2011. And they're very, very, very difficult cases, and you can see how entrenched in the community this church is. It sounds like it's more of a mainstream sort of evangelical type church. I don't know.
I'm a saint, I'm a sinner, I'm your soldier, I'm the killer, I'm a disease on the shore waiting to be aired.
And how embarrassing for the dad who's the leader of this church. He's the founder of the fucking church. So we'll follow this, but it's just, and it is something for these girls to come forward later. It just is. This is not easy for for somebody to come and spill their guts and have their credibility challenged. I mean, granted, you're innocent until proven guilty. I get that. And I wholly support that. And the allegations have to withstand scrutiny in a court of law. But it is difficult for these. I mean, people don't like to talk about this stuff. I mean, who does? You know, I was a child. I felt violated. I felt blah, blah, blah. You know, I trusted him. You know, I thought he was my friend, and he had sex with me, and I was really confused. And now looking back on this really fucked me up. I don't trust anybody anymore. That's the kind of stuff that you hear with this. So my heart goes out to these 3 people who are making these allegations, and I hope there aren't any more, but you never know. And my heart goes out to his parents. I mean, fuck, they're dealing with a shitstorm. You know, I mean, church divided, house falls, right? It is what it is in Licking County. Fuck, I still can't get over that. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, I know who you are. Yeah, on the couch, you. Get off your ass and go subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, there's something wrong with you. Subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Go to clrbrucerivers.com for your hats and hoodies and all the goodies. And make sure if you're going to sign up for Patreon, as a paid member, you will get a free hat sent to your location. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Skirt, 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 skirt. Is that how do you say that? Skirt, skirt, skirt. Yeah. Beat it up. Where I beat it up. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own. And how lucky are you to have a very own personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer here at your disposal for your infotainment, for your entertainment, for your education about the criminal law system and various cases. Boy, you're lucky. Just kidding. Anyway, today we're reacting to TK. TK is a rapper turned street hood, or is he street hood turned rapper? I don't know which. But he'd done some really bad things, and we're going to talk about it. And he starts trial on his second case because he was already looking at 55 years, and then it took off because he took off his bracelet. But before we get to that, this, like all of our episodes, is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a very easy way to talk to a lawyer for $49. If you have a question and you need it answered like right now, go to AskALawyer.com. You can either do their AI version, which I think might be a little cheaper, or you can actually talk to a lawyer to answer a question. Hey, do I need a lawyer for this? Or what is my next option for that? Just about any question you would need a lawyer for, go to AskALawyer.com. My grandma does it all the time. She tries to turn me in. She tries to do this. She tries to do that. I'm not letting her out of that basement. Just kidding, of course. But honestly, it's a very easy and inexpensive way to get direction when you need it most. So go to AskALawyer.com. Okay, TK. Hey, Tay, you want some K? He started out as a rapper, and in January 2016 on New Year's, he was or was not the trigger man of a shooting death of a University of North Texas student. Let's say he wasn't the shooter. What happens if you're not the shooter, but you're along with the shooter, and the shooter does some bad shit that's foreseeable? Guess what? In for a penny, in for a pound. If we go to a liquor store and we know we're going to rob the liquor store, but you have a gun and you shoot the clerk, guess what? You're done. You are done. You are just as guilty of that crime as if you had pulled the trigger. Do you remember in My Cousin Vinny where he says, I shot the clerk? I shot the clerk? And they try to use that as an admission? Anyway, that's what happens. Somebody goes in to rob a store, you're with them, and you're going to rob the store too, but they kill somebody in the course of the activities, you're done. You are just as responsible. And so even if TK wasn't the trigger person, he's along doing this shit. And what happened? He got house arrest on that, and then he went on the run. Generally, guys who go on the run are not, found to be innocent later. So he posted, and then you post shit on fucking Twitter. Are you fucking stupid? You know, you generally, okay, lay low. Don't say shit. Fuck this house arrest shit. Fuck 12. They're going to have to catch me on Hood. Well, I think they did. I think they did catch him. Try to make a bail argument after you post something like that, after you cut your ankle monitor off. So he became famous when the January 16th in 2008, he released the song The Race. You know, and the song taunted police. You can't make this up. What do we call that, ladies and gentlemen? What do we call that? I'm trying to teach you all something here. Stop self-snitching, right? So he says, fuck a beat. I was trying to beat a case, gang, but I ain't beat that case, bitch. I did the rape. Beat it up where I nut. I don't know what he means by that. I know where do you think he nuts? He probably nuts in another guy's ass now that he's in jail. Beat it up where I nut, shoddy face, little bitch. I mean, these are just like right out of like William Shakespeare, don't you think, these lyrics? Eli blast cracking fours like a vase, gang. Pop a fella, then I go on my way. Pop a fella. Did you really pop a fella? Do the dash, then I go out the way. Rob a fella's shoes. Rob a fella lace. Give me that shit, fella. He didn't say fella, but I have to say fella. We're trying to see 100 bands in your face. Okay. Why don't you add 5 years for the gun he's got in his hand because he's a convicted felon? How many songs do you think he's going to record behind bars? You know, and I don't mean to criticize his art, if that's art, but it doesn't seem like art, does it? It seems like more like biographical, you know, like he's telling on himself. You know, I didn't beat the case. Well, he didn't beat the case. And I'm going to go on the race. In other words, he went on the run and he cut off his bracelet and he went on the run. Okay. The chutzpah that these guys have, and the self-snitching, and I just don't understand it. So he's currently on trial for capital murder of photographer Mark Anthony Saldivar. So he and his buddies lured him to a photo shoot, and then we're gonna steal his shit. And Saldivar hopped on the car as they shot and killed him. When you're on the run from a 55-year sentence, you really don't have anything to lose, right? Because 55 years basically is a life sentence for him anyway. So on the second day of trial, there's bystander witnesses that were called to the stand. They described a chaotic scene where the photographer, Saldivar, was pushed from a vehicle, shouted for help. He climbed onto the vehicle's hood in an attempt to retrieve his stolen property. If someone wants to take your shit, you can get more shit. Just get the fuck out of there. You know, you don't have to beat somebody up or try. Because if they've got a gun and you don't, even if you do have a gun, you don't have the right to shoot somebody for taking your property. A man then exited the vehicle and shot Saldivar. So let's watch a little bit of this testimony. And some explosive testimony, Joanna Reyes, who claims to be TK's girlfriend. She's my girlfriend, but guess what, girlfriend? You're not my girlfriend anymore because now you're telling on me in court. So let's see what girlfriend has to say.
And so after you picked up Mark Saldivar, where did you guys go?
He asked us if we could reschedule for the day and if we can give him a ride to North Star. So I agreed and I said, okay, that's fine.
Okay. And so you were still going to give him a ride to North Star Mall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so on the way to North Star Mall, what happened?
We hit the light at McCullough, and Tamor took out his gun and pointed it at Mark and asked for his bag. Mark.
Okay, I need your bag. You know, we're going to do a photo shoot, and I'm going to kill you. I mean, what the fuck?
Refused to give him the bag, so they all started hitting him, and Tamor was hitting him with the gun, and the whole time I didn't look back, but when I did, I saw his face, and I started telling them to let him go, and I just kept screaming, let him go.
Objection, hearsay.
Objection, hearsay. Why isn't it hearsay? Because it's an excited utterance. I mean, something's going on like fucking crazy, you know, like somebody's getting their ass beat for a bag, and you're seeing this, and you're telling them to stop, and you know it's a chaotic scene. It's called excited utterance. So hearsay, and I don't mean to belabor the point on hearsay, but generally hearsay is not admissible, but there are exceptions, and excited utterance is one of them. But look at her; she's shaken up by this. You know, I mean, you can say this, you can say that, and pop, 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 skirt, you know, whatever. But fucking A, you know, you're dealing with somebody's life here, you know? And if you're pop, pop, popping, guess what? Now your life is gone. But your life was gone anyway because you got a 55-year sentence. And it's just callous.
And Jalen opened the door and started pushing him out. And he was fighting to get back in the car. And then they didn't let him in the car. So he went around the car and he jumped on the hood. And then...
All for what? All for what? For a photographer's fucking bag. And you don't even know what's in the bag. What, some cameras? You didn't have any film because people don't use film anymore. I mean, what the fuck? All for what? For nothing. For violence. For the sake of robbing somebody. Just because you're into that.
The light turned green.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you right there, okay?
Okay.
So, when you all were at the light on McCullough, you said Tamor produced his gun, correct?
Yes.
And who did Tamor have the gun pointed at?
Mark.
And what was Tamor saying when he had the gun pointed at Mark?
To give him his bag.
And so, once the light turned green, what happened?
He pointed the gun at me and told me to start driving. So I started driving. I didn't know where to go. So I turned into the first place that I saw, which was the Chick-fil-A.
Well, you know, if a homicide is going down, you know, you build up an appetite. So you'd probably want to get a chicken sandwich or something. And, you know, while he's holding, do you want anything? No, you're not going to fucking eat, buddy. I mean, give me a fucking break. Chick-fil-A, oh. And you can tell she's just moved by this experience.
Once I turned into the Chick-fil-A, he kept yelling at me to get him off the car. I didn't know how to, so I was just going back and forth really quickly. And
in all reality, what the fuck is she doing with him anyway? I mean, why would you be with somebody that's on the run? You know, ladies, if you're looking for a guy, if they're on the run, probably not the guy for you. I've never understood these women or people. I mean, Gypsy Rose Lee or whatever the fuck her name is, that, you know, chick who was in prison for killing her mother. I mean, all kinds of guys were writing to her, I want to be her. I mean, she's not good looking at all. Why the fuck would you do that? Give me a break. And then people write to people in prison saying, hey, oh, you're so, like the Unabomber. I'm sure this chick's writing to him. Ladies, if he's looking at 55 years, he's not going to be a good provider.
Mark kicked the windshield and opened the door and shot him.
So how do you cross-examine somebody like that from the defense standpoint? I mean, listen to her voice cracking. She sounds like she's telling the truth. She sounds like she's reliving this experience. So what do you say? Well, you didn't really see TK do this, did you? Yeah, I did. I mean, very difficult to get over testimony like that. So let's just watch a little bit more testimony.
But who is the only person that you saw with a firearm in the motor vehicle?
Tamor.
And so when you get to the Mexican restaurant, what happens?
I parked the vehicle, and then they started getting out of the vehicle, and then I got out of the vehicle, and they were going through the backpack, and then also going through his wallet, throwing things out.
And so you said, do you know where Mark Saldivar's backpack was at this time?
Jalen had it.
going through his wallet and throwing things out. I mean, he doesn't even know what he has. Why would you rob somebody that you don't even know what they have and then kill them just because they gave you a hard time? Like I said, he's on the run. He's doing 55 years. He doesn't give a shit. You know, he's on that race. On that race, put that gun in your face.
Okay. And regarding Mark Saldivar's belongings, who did you observe with Mark Saldivar's wallet?
Jalen.
Okay. Do you know if there was anything inside of the wallet?
He had got upset because there was only $10.
$10. This was for $10. Now, I understand, you know, certain crimes. You know, I mean, you steal from somebody and it's hundreds of millions of dollars and maybe you do 4 or 5 years. Maybe you stash it away and you've got it for the rest of your life. Michael Milken and Ivan Boesky is what I'm talking about. That's back in the 80s. I can understand that. That, you know, I don't condone it, but I can understand. Robbing this guy when you don't know what he has and for $10. So your life is not even worth $10, is what you're saying.
When you say he got upset, who are you referring to?
Jalen.
Can you please describe to the jury the demeanor of Tamor McIntyre and Jalen Bell at the Mexican restaurant once you all got off the vehicle?
They were kind of going back and forth, and then Jalen applauded him and gave him a high five, and they high-fived each other, and Jalen said he caught your first body.
You caught your first body. Well, if you live like that, you're going to die like that. If you take the risk, you got to pay the penalty. And now that's what he's doing. Tell me she doesn't seem absolutely credible. Absolutely. And it's, what do you do? What do you do with somebody like that for cross-examination? You know, and the thing about it is, whether he shot him or not, the other person that he's with, in for a penny, in for a pound.
Can you describe to the jury how you were feeling when you all were at the Mexican restaurant?
In shock.
In my understanding, I don't know what she was charged with, but she was charged with a crime as well. So she testified, you know, for leniency on that crime. And maybe she had an aiding and abetting charge in conjunction with this, which is my guess. That's the only way you cross-examine her. Well, isn't it true you took a deal in this case? Isn't it true that, you know, you'd be going to prison but for your testimony here today? And then, you know, the counter to that is, what do you get from this bargain if you lie? Nothing. You get zero. I mean, this is what I see with young people all the time. Some really, really stupid shit. You know, without any regard. You know, when you're a child, you know, like an infant, for example, and you have, you know, like this object, you know, any object, like an orange, you know, or a phone. You hold this in front of a baby and you put it behind it. It doesn't exist anymore. Why not? Because a baby doesn't have any sense of permanency. You know, they're just building their brain. You know, they're building, you know, their experiences. When you're a toddler, you can see, like, falling down some stairs might hurt you, but you can't see your conduct affects anything. You're just kind of in a little orb running around, you know. When you're 12, you got a little more permanency, you got a little more whatever, but you still don't have the foresight to think what I'm doing today is going to affect me tomorrow. And that's why when all of a sudden you little shits turn into teenagers and we as parents, you know, have to worry about you getting cars and going out into the real world and all the different things that come with it, and you making decisions on your own. Are you going to make good decisions? Are you going to make bad decisions? And all of a sudden, you know, you don't think of your actions, how they're going to, impact tomorrow. You just don't. This shit is at a whole nother level, an HNL, whole nother level, because this is just some dastardly gang banger bullshit. and you caught your first body. And when you get into these murder cases, you lose the forest for the trees sometimes, and you want to be a zealous advocate, and sometimes you do stuff that may not be exactly to the judge's liking. So let's see how the defense gets admonished here.
A big misstep by attorneys representing a local rapper accused of murder. Tamor McIntyre's defense team scolded by the judge today. McIntyre, also known as TK47, is charged in the deadly robbery of photographer Mark Saldivar back in 2017.
As the driver of the alleged getaway car was on the stand, the defense made a mistake. Erica Hernandez joins us live here in the studio to explain all this. So, Erica, what did the defense do wrong here?
Yeah, Myra, before this trial began, a motion was granted that the defense could not bring up any bad acts committed by Mark Saldivar in front of the jury without further discussion outside the jury's presence. Well, today, during cross-examination, attorney John Hunter brought up that Saldivar might have had child pornography. Now, this was...
How is that relevant to him getting killed on the side of the road?
As Joanna Reyes was being questioned, Reyes says she was the one driving the car the day Saldivar was killed and saw Tamor McIntyre pull the trigger. In cross-examination, the defense was trying to imply that Reyes instigated the entire incident by leading Saldivar on and telling the others in the car that he had child pornography in his bag. That led to a quick objection by the state, the jury being removed from the courtroom, and Judge Stephanie Boyd having some words with the defense.
What matters to the court is that it's a bad act, and all you all had to do was approach the court. I would have heard it, what you are seeking to get from this witness, and I would have made a ruling on it. But instead, you have people who are violating rules.
Now, at worst, this could have ended in a mistrial, but Judge Boyd asked the jury to disregard any mention of child porn.
So when you are told by the judge, don't ask this question, don't ask that question, stay away from this topic, you have to. And it is a violation of a court order. You're in contempt, really. And why is that important? Because guess what? You ring a bell, you can't unring a bell with an instruction by the judge. So if I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, what's in your head right now? Pink elephant. And if the judge tells you, okay, now, remember Mr. Rivers talked about a pink elephant. Well, I want you to disregard that and never think about a pink elephant again. Guess what you're always thinking about? A pink fucking elephant. I mean, it's just what we do as human beings. And so, what's the remedy for that? The remedy is the instruction. And it probably isn't going to go anywhere. But if they had to declare a mistrial because of that, then they start all over again.
Pornography during questioning or testimony instead. Now, the defense did continue to grill Reyes, even asking her if she was the one who placed the gun in McIntyre's hand, which she denied. Now, Reyes did finish testifying today. Overall, her testimony seemed to be a benefit for the state as she didn't change her accounts of major details that she claims happened that day. Now, testimony in this trial will resume tomorrow.
When you have a witness who's opposed to you, like Reyes, like the girlfriend of TK47, that should be his prison number, I think. Anyway, when you are going after somebody like that, you can really only go after them on really two issues: bias and inconsistencies. Otherwise, when you beat up on a witness that is sympathetic, which she is very sympathetic, wouldn't you agree? And you risk alienating the jury, but you also might not have a choice. You got to take that chance. TK47 is already facing a 55-year sentence, so he really had nothing to lose. But why the fuck would you do this? I mean, now you're looking at capital murder for $10. For $10 fucking dollars. We'll follow the trial, but this is not an unkind actor. I mean, TK is not exactly a sympathetic figure. And granted, I'm a defense lawyer, and I know how tough these kinds of things are. And I tend to look at things through the lens of, how can we win this one? In other words, through a defense perspective. and his goose is plucked. It is gutted. It is in the oven. It's being basted by the prosecution, and it's going to be served up to a plate of justice in not that terribly long, because that girlfriend's testimony is, she probably got an aiding and abetting charge, and then, all right, we won't put you in prison, or we'll give you a lot less prison because she certainly was guilty of harboring a fugitive and aiding an offender after the fact, right? So that's her bias. So we'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Make sure you go to clrbrucerivers.com for your hats and hoodies and all the goodies. And then I just ordered some art of Michael's. I'm going to put it up on my wall, and we'll see how it looks. It really is amazing. We'll show you that next time. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.